Welcome back. Bonus video today, but I'm going to drink bourbon after this, but not during the filming. So we can also say no bourbon was harmed in the making of this video. But anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is, I brought it up before, but I'm going to go in more detail about adding water to bourbon, bourbon over ice, things like that. So stick around and I'll bring that to you right after this. All right, we're back. I don't have any bourbon out today. I'm not going to do that. But what I will say, and I know I've brought this up before, you will not be judged by us here at Bourbon Bounty. So I remember back when I was starting off getting a flavor for bourbon, and actually for a long time I didn't appreciate what bourbon tasted like. We would do every once in a while we'd have Jim Beam or something, but Jack and Coke, Beam and Coke, I didn't know the difference. But then as I got older and got a little more, I guess you could call it refined in life, I started noticing I would put, there was a difference in the flavors, and where is this going to take me? So I went down that journey and started really appreciating bourbon and got into, of course, it started off with, I would have something like an old fashioned instead of something in Coke. And you could taste the bourbon flavor more, but it still had artificial sweetener in it and the orange bitters and things like that, clouding the actual flavor of the bourbon. And then, progress and get on, and then you start trying this, trying that, and you could say I got hooked on it. And, after that, I was getting into the nuances. I started watching reviews. I started reading about reviews. I'm not trained in this in any way. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I just know what I like, and I'm just trying to bring you an honest review because I've drank a lot of bourbon, and I've tasted a lot of bourbon over time. And, I've tried all these different things, and there are bourbons that will open up if you put a few drops of water in it. Very important to note there, I said a few drops of water. Don't put half and half. Don't bury it because it's going to water down. It's just like anything else. I would not recommend going out and buying a $25 bottle of bourbon to even start there with the neat, trying to drink it just straight. You might just ruin yourself from it for a while. Start off with something a little better. You can watch the reviews, see if any notes are hitting off of these previous bourbons that I've talked about. For you personally, maybe you like it a little sweeter. Maybe you like it, I want to get into more of the leather and toasty notes. Look back through the reviews. Don't just look at mine, look at others. There's other good folks out there reviewing bourbons that are far more probably educated in it than I am. I'm trying not to be influenced by those. I'm trying to just go by taste. So, certainly I am influenced by watching and reading, but I'm not going to be dishonest. I'm not going to read. I try not to read another person's review right before I try a bourbon, because I don't want to just parrot back to you what they're saying. And there's a lot of things that come from that. If you are expecting to taste something, you could very well taste it, where if you hadn't had that power of suggestion in your mind, you may have had a different experience. So that's what I try to do here. Now, over ice. If you go to a bar, I'm not saying a high-end, like a bourbon bar or something, but a regular bar, and you say, I want this on the rocks. It could be anywhere from crushed ice to like the small cubed ice, but the better bourbon bars will have clear ice. And what that does is it causes a slow melt in the glass. And so it infuses water very, very slowly into the bourbon. You can't control it. It's not like putting a few drops in and then enjoying a snifter of it. And I know we've talked about these Glencairn glasses, and this isn't a quote unquote Glencairn glass. This is a snifter shaped as sort of like a Glencairn glass, but this is not that. But this is the same basic concept. It funnels the aromas right up here to the top. It gives me a more intense area of which to, get the nose on the bourbon and bring you those notes. That's why I use these. I also keep it a little cooler in this room than the rest of the house. And sometimes I talk about warming it in my mouth a little. And that's another thing. You may have heard of whiskey stones or, bourbon stones or rocks or whatever. And those are typically made of marble or some kind of metal. I can tell you they're not as cold as ice. But if you have a warmer environment, yeah, it may bring your bourbon to a comfortable temperature to where you may even have to warm it a little in your mouth to get all of the notes. But I like to take the whole ride of starting a little cooler and then getting that first hit. Sometimes I'll chew on it. I call it chewing on it a little bit before I swallow, make sure it's all around. But I don't want to overwarm it before I swallow and get the follower finish on it, and to let you know how long that is. So there's a method to the madness on here. But let's talk about these clear ice cubes. And I will put a link to this down below. I bought this off of Amazon, read a bunch of reviews. I'm obsessive about stuff like that. This comes in 3 parts. Basically what you have here is an insulated cooler. You can see how thick the sides are. Well, this thing is completely insulated all the way around. And then you have these silicone inserts. And the first one is, you can see it has a cavity in the bottom of it, and there's 4 sections. And those line up with these, and there's holes in this. So the science behind this is when water freezes from the top down, it pushes the air down. And what the recommended use on this, you just put these together, and then you fill it up with water until it's to the top. You put it in here, and you put the whole thing in your freezer. It forces the water to freeze from the top down, pushing the air down to the bottom. The recommended time on this, and this is where it kind of gets cumbersome if you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a clear ice machine. And there's a little fill line right in here, but you won't be able to see it on the camera. But if you buy one, you can see it. But it's 18 to 24 hours. And I can tell you from experience, 18 is not long enough, and 21 is too long. And so what you run into, if you only go 18, you will have good clear cubes with a concave bottom because it didn't freeze all the way down. But they are clear, crystal clear. If you go 19 to 20 hours right in there, which means you need to set an alarm on your phone or something and make sure you go get it out of there, you will have full cubes of ice with some ice forming underneath those holes, but not a lot. And you can just knock it right off and pull it apart. If you wait 22 hours to longer, this entire thing's eventually going to freeze, and you're going to have to run water over it and wait. You're messing up your cubes to even get it to come apart. You can get it out of here, but you won't be able to get these 2 pieces apart right here because they'll be frozen solid together. But if you follow the instructions and you're diligent about the time, and you time it out to say, well, I'm going to put it in here before I go to bed. I'll be back home before, during this time. But what I do is when I get them out of here, it makes 4 of them, you can see, is I put them in a Ziploc bag and zip them up, and then I will refill it and do 4 more. Once I get those, as long as you don't leave them in the freezer too long, you can kind of break them apart right quick and just drop them in a glass and pour the bourbon over it, and you're good to go. Now, I don't do this often. A lot of times I use these for iced tea and things like that when I'm out here in what I call the bourbon room. My wife calls it something else, but anyway, it is what it is when it's being used for that purpose. So there's that. And I would highly suggest clear cubes over regular ice cubes, especially the small ones, because they're gonna melt too fast. And you're going to have to quickly hurry up and try the bourbon over and over and over again. Whereas with these, when you first put it in and you take a sip, it's almost like sipping it out of here, as long as you don't let it sit there for too long. And then the second sip, it'll be a little cooler. It'll have just a tiny bit more water in it. And I'm not saying you're going to have a good ride all the way, but it will take you further through the drink with those nuances and opening up here and there. And that's the way to really experience it. But if you don't want to go that route, then what I do, and people, you can get droppers if you want, but what I do is I just take the lid here and hang on. It was too full. I just pour a little bit in here. And then from here, I will just put drops. Like that's probably 3 or 4 drops right there. Swirl it around in the bourbon. Let it mix and air good. But of course, I've already tasted it before I've done this. And then I'll taste it again to see what the differences are. And you will get, on better bourbons, you will get a lot more notes come out. And people call it, like I said, opening up the bourbon. But you are changing the flavor from what they bottled for you. Now, with cast strength bourbons or barrel proof, or straight from the barrel to the bottle, some of those typically will open up more, but what you're eventually going to get if you add too much water to it is just the non-barrel strength version of that. Because basically that's what they're doing, is they're taking all these barrels, they mix them together, the alcohol content is up here, they wanted it at 90 proof or whatever, and they just bring it down. So just be mindful of that when you're trying these bourbons. And trying different ways to drink them. Like I said, we're not going to judge. If you're still drinking and Coke, go to less sweet and go to and ginger ale, but don't put very much in it, and work your way down. Maybe try some old fashions, and then eventually get to where you're just having it straight over ice, and then go use the clear ice, and then start enjoying more bourbons neat, because that gives you the full intensity of what was intended to be brought to you, and you will get all of the notes that you're supposed to be getting off of that bottle. Whether you like them or not, you will get them all. All right, so with that, I'm going to end this bonus video. As always, please subscribe, and I'll keep bringing you more videos.